There comes a point in life when love feels like a memory, when silence replaces passion, and the mirror whispers that desire belongs only to the young. Nights grow colder, days feel emptier, and the heart begins to believe it has retired from love. But then, something unexpected happens. A glance that lingers too long, a hand brushing against another, a voice that cuts through the years of numbness. Suddenly the soul trembles, the body awakens, and what begins as conversation becomes confession. What begins as closeness becomes surrender. Passion once thought buried returns like fire, reminding that love is timeless. At 60, the heart beats faster than ever, the body feels alive again, and the soul discovers what it means to be truly seen. This is not the end, it is the rebirth of love, deeper, rawer, more powerful than before. Welcome to a journey of true love's awakening. There is a silence that no one talks about, the kind that creeps in not with storms but with the passing of time. It settles into the walls of the house, into the folds of the sheets, into the very breath at night. At first, it feels like peace, the stillness that comes after years of chaos, but then it lingers too long, and that peace turns into a heavy emptiness. Days look the same, nights stretch into each other, and the world feels like it has quietly moved on. The body still breathes, the heart still beats, but there is no rhythm, no fire, no pulse of love to keep it alive. It is like walking through a life already lived, watching the clock hands circle without reason. The bed feels larger now, though it is the same size it has always been. It holds only one body, and in that space, the cold creeps in like a reminder. Pillows stacked high no longer feel like comfort. They feel like barriers, obstacles between what is and what once was. The mind drifts back to nights when warmth was shared, when a touch could send a shiver through the skin, when a whisper in the dark meant someone was there. Now the silence presses harder, so heavy that it can almost be heard. The mirror does not lie. It shows the lines etched by years, the marks of time that no amount of cream or effort can erase. But it is not only the face it reflects, it is the soul. It whispers cruel truths, that passion has become a memory, that desire belongs to youth, that love is something no longer meant for the present. There is an ache that no one can see, a hunger buried so deep it begins to feel like imagination. It is easier to believe that part of life is over, easier to close the door quietly and let the world think that everything is fine. But even with that silence, something inside refuses to die completely. In the quiet of night, dreams still visit, uninvited and relentless. They bring back the heat of lips once pressed against skin, the thrum of a heart that raced from a single kiss, the way a body could tremble with both fear and excitement. Waking from those dreams is both torture and proof that beneath the calm exterior, the soul still remembers, the body still remembers. Love never really retires, it only sleeps. There is a difference between being alive and feeling alive. The days can be filled with chores, conversations, the simple rhythm of existence, but none of it touches the depth of the heart. The longing for something more cannot be silenced. It sits quietly in the chest, beating softly like a drum behind closed doors. And yet it is hidden behind smiles, behind polite words, behind the mask that convinces the world there is no need, no want, no desire. And then comes the moment that changes everything. It might seem small to others, a glance, a word, a hand brushing past, but when the heart has been starved, even the smallest spark feels like fire. Suddenly the silence breaks, not loudly but deeply. The breath quickens, the skin awakens, and the emptiness is filled with something long forgotten. It is not about time, not about years, not about what the mirror says. It is about connection. That first stirring is both terrifying and intoxicating. Terrifying because it feels like forbidden territory, a reminder of a world thought lost. Intoxicating because it brings the soul back to life, shaking loose the dust of years spent in quiet surrender. The heart beats faster, the mind spins, and the body hums with energy that had been buried for too long. The silence that once felt suffocating now feels like anticipation, the kind that lingers before a kiss, before a touch, before the unraveling of everything thought impossible. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It is the absence of being truly seen. And when that moment arrives, when a glance meets another and does not look away, when words carry weight instead of routine, the soul feels exposed yet safe. It is the realization that love was never gone, it was waiting for the right spark, the right voice, the right touch to remind it of its power. Love does not age, passion does not expire. The heart may grow weary, the body may change, but the essence of desire remains eternal. What once felt like the end is, in truth, only the beginning. The silence that ruled for so long breaks not with thunder but with a whisper, and in that whisper life returns, and in that return the truth stands clear. Love is not finished, it is only waiting to be awakened. It doesn't take much, not really. A single glance can feel like a flame pressed against the skin, and suddenly the body remembers everything it thought it had lost. It happens when least expected, in the most ordinary of moments, when the walls are down and life feels predictable. A pair of eyes meet, and instead of looking away, they linger, just a second longer than they should. That second is enough. Something stirs inside, something that had been buried beneath years of silence, and the soul trembles as if startled awake. The touch that follows isn't planned. It isn't even dramatic. Just a hand brushing against another, the kind of accidental graze that should mean nothing, but it doesn't mean nothing. That simple contact shoots through the body like a current, awakening nerves that had been dormant, stirring a hunger that had been waiting. The skin burns in a way that makes the air feel heavier, the moment slower, as if the world has paused just to make sure nothing is missed. The voice is the next thing that cuts through the stillness. Words, ordinary on the surface, but carried with a depth that feels different. There is something in the tone, gentle but sure, steady yet curious, that reaches past the layers of numbness. It slips beneath the defenses that have been carefully built, sliding into the cracks that loneliness left behind. For the first time in years, the sound of someone's voice doesn't just fill the room, it fills the chest, sinking into the heart like a reminder of what it is to be alive. It all feels impossible at first, that something so small, so simple, could unravel years of silence, that a glance, a brush of skin, a voice could undo the certainty that love was finished. But the body doesn't lie. The heart doesn't lie. They respond before the mind can argue, quickening, burning, yearning for more. The hunger rises quietly but fiercely, and with it comes a truth that cannot be ignored. Age does not matter here. Time dissolves in the heat of connection. What matters is the way the soul leaps forward, recognizing something it has long been searching for. The days after feel different. The silence is no longer the same. It is charged now, humming with possibility. Every movement, every word, carries the weight of what has already been awakened. A simple hello sends a rush of warmth through the chest. A casual laugh lingers longer than it should. Even the smallest glance feels like a secret being shared in plain sight. It is not about what is spoken. It is about what is felt beneath the surface, the electricity alive between two souls who can no longer ignore the pull. The hunger grows, not just for touch, but for closeness, for understanding, for being seen again. The nights are no longer cold stretches of silence, but restless hours where the mind replays every look, every word, every moment of closeness that has passed. The body longs, yes, but so does the heart, and in that longing, the years disappear. The doubts, the fears, the whispered lies of the mirror lose their power, because in the fire of connection, nothing else matters. Not age, not time, only the undeniable truth of being desired, of being wanted, of being alive. There is a moment that seals it, a moment when hesitation breaks, when the space between is finally closed. A hand lingers, fingers curl, breath catches, and suddenly the waiting ends. The kiss isn't planned. It arrives like lightning, impossible to resist, undeniable in its force. Soft at first, searching, trembling with both fear and need, and then deeper, hungrier, filled with the weight of all that has been denied for too long, that single kiss is enough to tear down every wall, enough to drown out every doubt. It is proof that what is happening is real, that connection this deep cannot be denied. In that moment, everything else fades. The years, the loneliness, the silence, all of it disappears beneath the heat of being touched, of being wanted, of being seen so completely. It is raw, unfiltered, and powerful, not because of its perfection, but because of its truth. The body responds, the heart races, the soul burns, and in the fire of it all comes a rebirth. Love was never gone. It was waiting, and now it has returned, and in the returning, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Connection is stronger than time. Desire is stronger than doubt, and when the spark is real, nothing can extinguish it. It began with words, nothing more. A conversation that was supposed to be light, simple, a passing moment that held no weight. Yet with each exchange, the walls that had been standing for years began to soften. One story led to another, and before long, the laughter carried something deeper, something warmer. The comfort of being listened to, truly listened to, opened a door that had been locked for far too long. The words turned into confessions, not rehearsed or planned, but raw and unguarded. Secrets spilled out in the quiet of the night, secrets that had been buried beneath silence and years of pretending. Pain, hope, desire, all spoken without fear of judgment. The honesty between two souls became a thread that pulled them closer, weaving them into a space where nothing else existed. The closeness grew naturally. It wasn't sudden or forced. It began with a hand brushing against an arm, a lingering touch that carried more meaning than either could admit aloud. The air grew heavy, charged with unspoken yearning, and even in the pauses between words, something deeper was being said. The body leaned in without asking permission. The heart beat faster without warning, and the distance that had once felt necessary became impossible to maintain. Hesitation arrived, as it always does. The mind whispered warnings, reminding of time, of age, of rules and expectations. But the body betrayed those whispers, leaning closer, trembling with anticipation. Breath mingled in the space between, shallow, uneven, waiting for one final surrender. The silence was no longer empty. It was alive, pulsing with everything that wanted to be unleashed. Then it happened, the first touch that was not by accident, not hidden behind the safety of conversation. Fingers intertwined, slow and searching, as if rediscovering the language of intimacy long forgotten. The heart raced, the body shivered, and all the hesitation melted into something stronger. Surrender came not in a moment of weakness, but in a moment of truth. The truth that this connection was undeniable, that it had been waiting quietly beneath the surface, and now it could no longer be restrained. The kiss followed like a storm breaking, gentle at first, almost trembling with fear, then deepening with hunger that had been starved for too long. Lips pressed harder, breaths grew heavier, and the world outside dissolved. Every nerve awakened, every inch of skin remembered what it meant to feel alive. The body, once thought forgotten, surged with life. The years of silence, of cold nights and empty spaces, disappeared in the heat of that embrace. Passion rose like fire. It started soft, tentative, exploring, but quickly turned fierce, unstoppable. Touch deepened into caress, caress into embrace, embrace into something endless. There was no measure of time in that moment. only the rhythm of two hearts rediscovering one another, of two bodies learning what it means to surrender completely. The night stretched endlessly, not in hours, but in the weight of every kiss, every breath, every shiver that passed between them. It was not only about the body, it was more than desire, it was the rediscovery of life itself. To be touched and to touch in return was to remember what had been thought lost forever. The loneliness that had once been unbearable was replaced with warmth so consuming it left no room for doubt. Every moment was proof that love and passion never truly die. They only sleep, waiting for the spark strong enough to awaken them again. The surrender was not weakness, it was freedom, the freedom to feel, to want, to live without shame or fear. In that storm of passion, there was no past, no age, no reason to hold back. There was only truth, and the truth was that love was still possible, that desire still burned, and that the soul could still be set on fire, no matter how many years had passed. When the night finally gave way to morning, there was no regret, only breathless silence, hearts still racing, skin still tingling from the fire of what had been shared. Eyes met in the quiet light, and no words were needed. The truth was written in every look, every touch, every smile that lingered after. That night was not the end of loneliness, it was the beginning of awakening. And in that awakening came the proof that love never dies. It waits patiently, and when it returns, it comes back fiercer, deeper, and more alive than ever. When the night ended, there was no shame in the quiet, no heaviness in the air, only a stillness that felt almost holy. The kind of silence that doesn't weigh, but lifts, as if the world itself pauses to honor what has just happened. The heart was racing, the body still trembling, but it wasn't from fear or doubt. It was the pulse of being alive again, of rediscovering a rhythm that had been silent for so long. The eyes met in the pale glow of morning, and in that gaze there was no question, no need for explanation. It was revelation, raw and undeniable. The years that had been carried like chains fell away in that moment. Lines on the skin, worries about age, the echo of all the times the mirror whispered that passion had passed. They held no weight anymore. Instead, there was a warmth that lingered in every part of the body, the afterglow of a night where walls were torn down and truths were finally embraced. It wasn't just the body that had been touched, it was the soul, and the soul, long thought hidden, long thought silenced, had come back to life. The memory of loneliness felt distant now, as though it belonged to someone else, as though it had been lived in another lifetime. The cold nights that stretched endlessly, the emptiness that echoed in the quiet, the hunger that had been buried under years of pretending, it all seemed so far away. In its place was a warmth that spread from the inside out, filling every corner of the heart. For the first time in years, there was no longing for something lost. There was fullness, there was fire, there was the unshakable truth of being seen and wanted completely. The touch of another had awakened more than desire. It had awakened hope. Hope that love is not limited by youth, not tied to a number, not confined by what the world says should be. It had awakened the understanding that the soul does not age, that passion is timeless, that connection can strike when it is least expected and burn brighter than it ever did before. What happened that night was not a denial of age, but a celebration of it, the depth, the wisdom, the richness that made the experience all the more real, all the more consuming. The body, once thought forgotten, had come alive in ways that felt almost unreal. Every touch, every kiss, every shiver of skin had reminded that desire was never gone, only waiting to be claimed again. And beyond the passion, there was something even greater, a feeling of being understood, of being cherished, of being looked at not as someone who was past her time, but as someone who still carried beauty, fire, and worth. That gaze, steady and unflinching, had given back something that had been missing for years, the certainty that love was still possible. Morning light has a way of making things clearer, stripping away illusions, showing things for what they truly are. And yet, nothing about that morning felt like an illusion. It felt even more real than the night before. There was no regret, no second guessing, no urge to run from what had happened. Instead, there was a calm acceptance, a deep gratitude, as if the universe had finally revealed a truth that had been hidden for too long. That truth was simple. Love is not bound by age, not reserved for the young, not something that fades when the years gather. Love is eternal, and when it arrives, it makes everything new again. The heart beat faster with every glance, not out of fear, but out of joy. The body carried the memory of touch, alive in every nerve, reminding with every movement that it was still capable of passion, still capable of surrender, still capable of being a vessel for love. The soul, once quiet and resigned, now pulsed with life. It was no longer waiting in silence. It was singing, it was burning, it was alive in a way that could not be contained. It became clear in that moment that what happened was not just about desire, not just about a night of passion. It was about rebirth. A soul once convinced that its time had passed had been brought back to life. A heart once quiet had remembered its song. A body once thought forgotten had awakened in fire. And all of it led to one undeniable truth, that true love, the kind that awakens both body and soul, does not fade with time. If anything, it grows deeper, richer, more powerful. There was no going back to the silence of before, no returning to the belief that love was finished. Once the soul has been touched in that way, once the heart has been set on fire again, it cannot pretend it doesn't know the truth. That truth is not bound to a number or a mirror or the passing of years. It is bound only to the connection that makes two souls burn when they meet, and so when the night ended, it did not feel like an ending at all. It felt like a beginning, the kind that does not come often, but when it does, it changes everything. Because love was not gone, love had simply been waiting, and when it returned with fire, with passion, with life so fierce it made 60 feel like the first time all over again. Love is not bound by age. It does not fade, it only waits for the right spark to awaken it again. What you've heard is not just a story, it's a reminder that passion, intimacy, and deep connection can return even when the world insists it's over. If this touched your heart, if it reminded you that true love is timeless, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that prove love and desire never die. Your soul is never too old to be reborn in love.